Hi, folks. It's Internet Rabbit Hole Daily again. We are still exploring the situation evolving in Afghanistan. We just watched a couple of videos from Al Jazeera, one that was, I think, a couple of months old. It was sort of who is the Taliban? And then one was from just today, which was discussing sort of what's happened recently.
Since the Taliban
took over. And so that was we certainly got a lot of new information. We don't know anything. Once again, we're just a couple of Canadians who are watching this stuff for the first time, trying to learn more. So we're certainly, we aren't newsmakers or
experts at all by any means. We're basically just reacting and commenting.
Because we think it's important. Because we think that this is something that's going to affect a lot of people, and it's something that we want to look into. So also, it's something that's important to you guys, or at least some of you, because a few of you, I've been talking to on Instagram. For example, we've got someone here, and you might have heard this in the other video, but I think it's worth mentioning again. I had a friend of the channel here reach out to me. We're going to keep things anonymous, but they wanted to tell me a little bit about what's going on in Afghanistan through the eyes of one of their friends who is from Afghanistan. So let me just sort of read this out to you, because I think it's kind of interesting the way he puts it here. He says, my friend told me that though not the best, the Taliban is the only option for Afghans, as the previous government was moth-eaten, highly corrupt, and incapable of handling the administration. That's why the local warlords joined hands with the Taliban and toppled the Ashraf regime, even though knowing that they're tough and strict for their rules, the Taliban, that is. The things he said why the Taliban came back are corrupt government, justice systems for crimes under Taliban, and lawlessness of the previous government. Now, he said that his friend lived there in Afghanistan, but had to flee due to continuous disruption in his studies, due to continuous firing and violence and all. So he migrated to India, completed his studies, and he's in the United Arab Emirates now. His family is still in Afghanistan. He also mentioned that the Taliban are going a little bit liberal for now, as they want the global community to recognize their legitimacy and want to comply more or less with the changed world as compared to their previous rule. So time will have an answer for the policy changes, like granting women the right to education work. Will the Taliban stick to their word on that? He said, as their spokesperson said, is this for real or only for the time being? And so that was something that I think both of us got wrong, as initially
I just wanted to say, I just realized I'm not wearing my shirt.
Oh, geez.
But I'm not wearing it. It's way too hot in here. Sorry, can't wear it today.
Well, you could take that shirt off and put this shirt on. All right. Okay, for this video, I'll allow it. Let's check this out here.
We didn't say what channel.
Oh,
this is now a different channel. This is how do you say it? WION?
Actually, one quick thing that I'll mention before is that when we both watched the first video, they were talking about how it was expected when the Taliban came in that women wouldn't be allowed to work anymore. They wouldn't be allowed to be educated yet. Because
that's what was happening when they had taken over in the past, right?
I think so, yeah. So what they were saying is, in the latest video that we watched, was actually that the Taliban was still sticking to the line that they're going to allow women to be educated and work and things like that.
I don't know, I hope so, but I have this hunch that that's kind of just propaganda to like gain support.
Yeah.
Like once they become legitimate, they totally could just be like,
backtrack.
Yeah, never mind. Okay, we're going to set out what we, wanted to do in the first place.
All right. So, well, let's check these guys out, because they're quite a bit of a different news organization.
And we did watch a video from this channel about the Taliban a little while ago, and that was just sort of talking about like they hadn't taken over Afghanistan yet, but they were starting to take over, or maybe was it?
Yep.
The troops had pulled out by then. Fully, they're not even fully.
Yeah, no, they weren't fully out. No.
Okay, so
they had started moving the troops out.
Are interested, you can check out that video, but this is a new one.
Gravitas. There we go. Jeez, Afghans pay for America's mistakes with their lives.
The last one that we just watched, they were talking a lot about Kabul. They hadn't, they had sort of captured it there, But is Kabul the capital?
Yeah, as I understand
Kabul
it,
is
it
the
was
capital,
also sort
right?
of maybe one of the strongest held
claimed that
cities
they
by
captured
the
it, but-
American forces.
So they did capture, I think, but then they were talking about how they were then try to establish themselves as like the official legitimate government. And then it was like there was sort of opposition that like, no, you're not really like the legitimate government. You need to have the support of the people.
That's what one of the commentators was saying in the interview guests that was on that last one.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, they took hold of the city, whether they're seen as legitimate or not.
And
they
we
are
saw this with the
government
plane,
now.
And people
Just
had died
devastating.
because they're
Just
holding onto the
devastating.
wings.
They're
and it's
so desperate. Watch this. Someone's going to fall.
oh, it's
Unreal.
horrible.
Just disturbing as all hell.
Oh, it's horrible.
Oh.
And it's like I guess the plane, they didn't know. Like they also just didn't like stop and because
The plane had to get the hell out of there. Like, I mean, what could they have done? What could they have done?
20 years is a long time.
It's really loud.
The people of Afghanistan have seen 20 years being wiped out in 20 days. The United States started the Afghan war, then chose to end it and left behind a mess that they expected the Afghans to clean up. A country which likes to call itself a superpower has been frantically evacuating its personnel from Afghanistan while the Afghans feel abandoned. What was the point of it all? What did America achieve? The Taliban have taken over Afghanistan at a pace which has left experts shocked. Heartbreaking scenes have emerged from the Kabul airport. 5 people were killed there today amid absolute mayhem. Afghans have been desperately trying to flee the crisis. What happens next? What lies ahead for the people of Afghanistan? It's women and children who will be forced to pay the price for America's mistakes. On Gravitas tonight, we get you ground reports from Kabul. We discuss how the Taliban takeover impacts the entire region and explore the options before India and the international community as the Afghan crisis intensifies. My name is Molly Gambhir. First, as always, Gravitas Global Headlines.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged the Security Council to protect human rights, saying that Afghanistan should not become a haven for terror groups.
I urge all parties, especially the Taliban, to exercise utmost restraint to protect lives and to ensure that humanitarian needs can be met.
Addressing the same meet, the Afghan envoy to UN made an impassioned appeal, saying the world must not recognize a government made by force. Hospitals in Haiti were
But other governments made by force, like, or I guess like dictatorships that are happening now, they aren't really, are they not considered by force because it's sort of like passed down because it started way long ago. Like even the West had like the royal family and that, and then they sort of like switched.
It's depending on who you're talking to. There's certain, I guess
I would be talking about like say North Korea, which is like full on dictatorship, but technically,
well, I'm not
it's
sure
always
that their government is recognized.
It's been in the power,
official
and I don't even think
capacity.
they are recognized.
So,
I guess,
and we heard in the last video that one of the American guys, I think he was from Vermont or something, was actually saying that as bad as it is, it's actually better for the United States to accept the Taliban as the rulers.
He never said as legitimate, but
Well, not as legitimate, but to accept them on the world stage as
did he say like diplomatically or something?
To accept them sort of diplomatically speaking.
Yeah.
I don't mean to endorse, because that's what he said. There's a difference between sort of endorsing and saying we think this is good, and it just, well, this is what happened, and it's better for our interests if we go along with it.
But he never said to accept them as a legitimate government, but basically a government.
Yep. Yeah, as the government of Afghanistan.
Kabul has fallen. The Taliban is now firmly in control of Afghanistan, and the Afghans have nowhere to go. They are literally paying for America's mistakes with their own lives. The videos I'm about to show you will prove just how desperate the people of Afghanistan are today. These pictures are disturbing, and we advise viewer discretion.
Wow.
This was the Kabul International Airport this morning. A massive crowd jostling to get a seat inside an airplane. The airport is closed. There are no commercial flights. But thousands of Afghans tried to force their way into any plane that they could see. Have a look at this now.
Unreal.
These are people of Afghanistan trying to get inside an American military aircraft.
But they would never like open the door for them, right?
But part of it too is there's a symbolic gesture here of running alongside with the plane in a big group to let the world see that they're being left behind, whether they think they can actually get on the plane or not. There's a symbolic gesture that's occurring, in my estimation.
Yeah.
Just look at how they end up trying to cling on to this aircraft.
Unreal.
Oh, waving.
And here's what happened next.
It's brutal.
On your screen is the moment when one of these American planes took off.
God.
Some Afghans were so desperate that they clung onto the wheel of the plane. At least 2 fell to their death. You have to see this to believe it.
The wheel.
Oh.
My God.
And this wasn't even the worst of it. There are reports of shooting and stampedes at the airport. At least 5 people died today as more people tried to jump the walls of the airport just to get to a plane.
Who shot them?
This is the mess that the United States has left behind. America is ending its 20-year-long war right where it began. Afghanistan has fallen back to the Taliban. The Taliban have installed themselves in the presidential palace. There is desperation and panic as the Taliban are walking freely on the streets of Afghanistan while brandishing their guns. What about the civilian government? The elected leaders of Afghanistan still remain out of sight. Former President Ashraf Ghani, who left Afghanistan yesterday with other aides, was denied entry into Tajikistan. Reports say he now wants to go to the United States via Oman. The Taliban has now declared the restoration of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, an Islamic state under the rule of the Taliban. The Taliban's Islamic Emirate was thrown out of power in 2001, and now they have come back. And they are stronger than before because they are being legitimized by major stakeholders. The top Russian diplomat in Afghanistan will be meeting members of the Taliban tomorrow. Reports say the Russians were among the first to establish contact with the Taliban after they took over last night. While major embassies were evacuating their offices, the Russian mission was apparently given protection by the Taliban.
That's what I was mentioning, not the protection part, but that their embassy stood
at the Russian embassy. Even China is welcoming the Taliban with open arms. Today, Beijing said it is ready to deepen friendly and cooperative relations with Afghanistan under the Taliban. Listen in.
China maintains contact and communication with the Afghan Taliban and others on the basis of full respect for the national sovereignty of Afghanistan and the will of various factions in the country. China has been playing a constructive role in promoting a political settlement of the Afghanistan issue.
China and Russia were among the few countries that openly met with the Taliban before the fall of Kabul. Now they have practically recognized their rule, just like Pakistan. Imran Khan said,
Why? Why is it benefiting China and Russia?
Oh gosh, that's a deep thing. But it's, oh man, that could be a whole discussion unto itself. But I mean, one thing maybe you could look at.
Why do they like the Taliban so much?
Well, I don't know that they quote like them so much, but they have an opportunity to ally themselves.
They want to be allied with Afghanistan. And in general, no matter who's leading it, they want that as an ally.
And maybe if the United States is going to have an antagonist antagonistic relationship. Maybe it's not so bad that they're going to have a friendly relationship with Afghanistan. So
I guess it's just more power to have more allies.
Says the Taliban has broken the chains of slavery in Afghanistan. Needless to say, the Pakistan Prime Minister made no mention of the chaos in Kabul or of how Afghan citizens are dying while desperately trying to escape the Taliban's rule. What about the United States? It still refuses to admit that it botched up the withdrawal in Afghanistan. Today, the U.S. State Department facilitated this statement. It has been signed by a total of 60 countries. Does it say anything about restoring democracy in Afghanistan? No. It just says those who want to leave Afghanistan should be allowed to exit.
Yeah.
Will the United...
That's what, like, of even just that one thing, just like a country that doesn't even let its own citizens leave, like maybe, I don't know if they will. Most of the talk is just in regards to like women and those types of things like that. But there's so many other things I feel like that they implement with like their harsh rule. Just this one thing where it's like, you're going to ban people from even allowed to leave. You should just be allowed to leave if you don't want to be there at all. Like just that one thing.
Keep in mind, when you leave, you've got to have somewhere to go, first of all. And then the other thing as well,
too. But they should allow you to leave their country.
But some of the, what the Taliban might be saying is, hey, you conspired against us with the Americans for 20 years. We're not only going to not let you leave, but we're going to kill you. So, or we're going to murder you, right?
Who conspired?
Well, for example, translators, people who translated for the American military.
Yeah, but the Taliban was never, ever official. Like, there's a terrorist group. Like, I'm just saying, just that one detail in itself that you're not even allowed to, like, exit that place. And these countries that are supporting that in this place, basically, this rule, this, like, yeah, that's totally fine. But obviously, the type of countries that they are, like, obviously wouldn't put it past them to not care about human rights and democracy.
Nations intervene in the Afghan conflict. The Security Council met just a short while back under the presidency of India. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres delivered a statement. He called on all parties involved and especially the Taliban to exercise restraint. The Indian representative delivered a statement as well. He said India hopes for an inclusive dispensation in Afghanistan that represents all sections of the Afghanistan society, including minorities. India also raised the issue of terror sanctuaries. Listen in.
The current situation in Afghanistan has numerous challenges. However, there are a few opportunities. If there is a zero tolerance for terrorism, in all its forms and manifestations, and it is ensured that the territory of Afghanistan is not used by terrorist groups to threaten or attack any other country, then Afghanistan's neighbors and the region would feel safer.
Because that'd be like ISIS.
So the civilian government is out. The Taliban is installing its government.
I zoned out for a second there, sorry.
Well, he's just saying that it shouldn't be a hotbed for terrorism. And that would make their neighbors feel safer.
ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But clearly, it's like, how is that not going to happen? Because they supported Al-Qaeda and like they wouldn't give
Osama bin Laden. You know, we don't know the details yet about that, but I suspect that the Taliban doesn't want to cede control or of their territory over to Al-Qaeda or over to ISIS. I could be wrong, but I suspect that they have sort of a vested interest in maybe not letting those groups flourish. I don't know. Once again, guys, I don't know.
Obviously, those things wouldn't even be able to seize control. They're not even powerful or big in numbers at all. But I'm just saying, I'm sure they're not going to care to stop them from doing what they want to do. I don't think they're going to condemn them.
I think they would care because then it would be taking away from their territory. Why would they want another group coming in there to take over Taliban territory?
I'm not saying no. They wouldn't like. I don't know. I guess, is that all they do is try to take it over? I thought they also just try to like implement, like if their ideologies line up like enough and then they can sort of, or do they just not even like each other? I don't know. They seem to be fine.
Yeah, we're going to have to watch another video around that one.
Seem to be fine not handing over Osama bin Laden. So
The West, led by the United States, has left Afghans in a lurch, and the global community is in a state of shock. They have been taken aback by the speed of the Taliban's takeover. But the fall of Kabul does not come as a surprise. For almost a month now, a team from WION has been in Afghanistan documenting every major development. They have witnessed how the Taliban has moved swiftly in recent weeks.
I'd be so scared
Today, our team was in Kabul.
be documenting
Our
that.
correspondent in Afghanistan, Anas Malik, went around the city. He captured how the Taliban...
Oh, but correspondent, like he's probably from there and lives there too, right? Like already, and they have
Yeah,
correspondence.
could be.
Which could be a dangerous position though, because
Yeah,
then like
nonetheless,
does the
it's dangerous.
Taliban does not like that at all.
Well, I think
if they keep it neutral, maybe it's fine, but I don't know.
is already controlling the streets of Kabul. Here is Anas Malik describing his first day in Kabul after the Taliban's takeover.
Day one under the Taliban rule. How is Kabul reacting? We decided to take a drive around the city. Let's have a look.
We left from our hotel and found the streets deserted. Shops were closed. Roads were empty.
I think though he's for sure from India.
The Taliban took control of Kabul less than 24 hours back. But their presence can be felt at every major crossing and checkpoint.
Life has not yet returned to normalcy. There is fear on the roads that is being clearly witnessed.
Wow.
With the
They wear a big like press tag though, right?
Yeah, over their bulletproof vest there. So.
Oh yeah, it's a bulletproof vest. Oh my god.
these closed shops,
So
as my
scary.
camera person can show you as well. Majority markets in the city currently stand closed. This is a military vehicle. This used to be under the control of the Afghan military. Now it bears a white flag.
Yeah,
driven
that's their flag.
by one of the Talib leaders.
We spotted traffic only when we reached the airport. Already, there are hundreds and thousands of desperate Afghans trying to board a flight out of the country. They have been unable to leave. But that hasn't stopped more people from making their way to the airport.
All roads leading are clogged and there is intense traffic. We're seeing that the Taliban are now out on the roads. They are controlling the affairs of the city practically. People are flocking in at the airport in a bid to secure themselves, in a bid to leave the country. But the Kabul airport currently stands closed for about 2 days at least. We're only seeing military aircrafts flying away from the airport of Kabul, the Hamid Karzai International Airport. We've heard reports of firing as well. In fact, even now, intermittently, I can hear gunshots from or near the airport. Not sure if you can hear that in the mic, but I can hear that very clearly.
Our next stop was the Afghan presidential palace, heavily fortified and guarded by the members of the Afghan forces. But now they have been replaced by the Taliban, who guard the entry points with guns in their hands.
The way that you see behind me is of the Afghan presidential palace. This is now being guarded by the Afghan Taliban. All around this once high-profile vicinity, this houses the Afghan presidential palace, the Subtitleed palace, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense as well. To the right, to the left, wherever you see are the Taliban who are stationed, who have taken their positions, and they now control the ins and outs of what was once the most powerful and influential office in Afghanistan.
Your name and where are you from?
My name is Abdul Karim Kohistani, and I'm from Kapisa.
Right, Mr. Kohistani, you speak good English.
Thank you.
Where have you studied from and how did you learn this?
I studied Kabul University Law and Political Science Faculty.
Right, and when was this?
Political science.
2013.
2013. And since when did you join the Mujahideen movement?
During my studying.
During your,
Yeah.
and why did you?
I was here.
No. What was the motive? I mean, driving factor behind joining?
Well, because of jihad. We are doing jihad.
Right.
Yeah, and we need Sharia to implement Sharia in Afghanistan.
Right. How long?
What's the difference between like jihad and Sharia? Like I know Sharia law is.
Yeah, and then jihad. Now I've
is
seen
jihad a text?
No, jihad is a movement. It's some people would say that it's sort of like a religious war. I've heard other people that it's just a struggle against something. I've heard different definitions depending on who you talk to.
So
Just
jihad-
recently in the comments, people were talking about different definitions for the word jihad.
Is it kind of like
One
a
felt it was this,
sector
another
of-
felt it was
it's
another.
sort of like a sect. It's like an extremist, like Islamic view.
I
right?
don't
Like,
know
and then you're-
about I'm not so sure, but I do understand that.
I
For
need to
example,
learn way more.
the Taliban or that ISIS would declare jihad against the Americans or would declare jihad against the West. So it's I think a lot of people see it as a religious war. But like I said, there's other
kinda
interpretations.
It's kind of similar to like Sharia law, sort of. Or I guess it's just like declaring religious war is what you're saying.
Yeah, declaring a religious war. But then again, like I said, there's other interpretations, and I've seen
Can
a
I
lot
just
of
like
discussion.
look at what the definition is?
Sure.
A struggle or fight against the enemies of Islam.
Spiritual struggle.
A spiritual struggle
against oneself.
within oneself against sin.
Okay.
Literally means striving or struggling.
Yeah, so that's the one that I sort of heard is that it was striving or struggling, but wasn't necessarily like attached to something specific as
It's like trying to, it's like a struggle to fight against the enemies of, I would say, extremist Islam.
Well, listen to this
With
here.
what
It says here a struggle to do good and to remove injustice, oppression, and evil from oneself and from society. So I guess it
They
depends on
believe
what
they're
your
doing good.
definition of removing
Yeah.
evil is. If your
But they're just
definition
extremist.
of removing evil is to declare Sharia law, then that fits that definition.
And then, a lot of people would declare that Sharia law is like evil, like killing people and
Have you guys been here?
horrible.
And how long do you intend to be here?
Almost 2 days, and inshallah we will be here for a long time.
For a long time.
For permanent.
The fall of Kabul was swift. The Taliban will now install its government. It's already in control of the streets. Many Afghans are trying to come to grip with the Taliban's takeover. Their future looks increasingly uncertain. Anas Malik in Kabul, Afghanistan, for WION, World is One.
World is one. That's what,
What does the
stands
return
for.
of the
right?
Taliban mean for the
World is one
people
news.
of Afghanistan? The last time the Taliban were in power, they not only suspended active politics, but they also put an end to all civil rights. Women were the biggest victims under their rule. They were banned from working, forbidden from even attending schools, forced to observe parda at all times, and barred from stepping out alone.
I don't know.
This
what
is
part
sort
it
of,
is,
it's not
no.
really saying that we have, this is kind of reiterating what we have watched. But
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering though if they're going to get into India here. I almost considered, in the interest of time, because we do need to get this out
oh, right.
tonight.
It does say what's next for India. I forgot about
Things
that.
going to be the same this time around? The Taliban says it has changed its approach, but some recent developments narrate a completely different story. Take a look at our next report for more.
Twenty
Is that
years
the other
after
Prime
being
Minister?
ousted by
Yeah.
the US military,
The
the Taliban
previous
has
leader of
returned to
Afghanistan.
power in Afghanistan. 2 decades of gains made by Afghans are being rolled back. The dream of a modern democratic state is fading away. What lies ahead for the people of Afghanistan, if history is anything to go by? To start with, this return spells the end of democracy. The Taliban are rolling up their sleeves to establish what they call the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. This essentially means a rerun of the 1990s, when the Taliban suspended active politics. and ruled the country through swords and guns. They jailed and executed those who sided with the government. Civil rights were suspended. Women were banned from working. Young girls were forbidden from attending schools or universities. They were all forced to observe purdah in equal measure and barred from
Observe
stepping out
purdah.
without being
I'm not familiar with
accompanied by a
purdah.
male relative. Men were forbidden from shaving their beards and forced to wear turbans. Prayer was made compulsory. Those who did not comply were arrested. Movie theaters were closed and repurposed as mosques.
They couldn't watch.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
weren't allowed to watch
This
movies
time,
at
the
all.
Taliban say their approach will be different, that they will create a society different from their previous rule. But there are reports of a woman already getting killed for wearing tight clothes. And lists of girls above 15 and widows under 45 being sought for being married off to the Taliban.
We had heard
These
about
go
that.
to show how
Yeah,
the
weren't they
Taliban have hardly
giving off
mended
women to the warlords? Or,
ways.
like they were already doing that.
They were-
That we saw.
Victorious Taliban will also seek international legitimacy. It will deal with international stakeholders on its own terms. The peace talks in Doha had already granted them some sort of validity. Western powers dealt with the Taliban as genuine stakeholders in Afghanistan. China has already been engaging with the Taliban leadership. Last month, it rolled out the red carpet for high-ranking Taliban delegates.
What?
Now, China says it is willing to continue
saw the writing
to have
on the wall?
friendly ties with the Taliban in Afghanistan. The return of
A
the
stronger
Taliban also means
Al-Qaeda.
the resurgence of terror outfits like
thought
the
the US,
Lashkar-e-Taiba,
finished them
Jaish-e-Mohammed,
off.
and the Al-Qaeda. As decades have passed, familial links have been forged between these outfits. Reports as recent as last month reveal how many terrorists from Pakistani outfits have joined the Taliban as commanders and advisors. For the Al-Qaeda, which carried out the 9/11 attacks on New York, there will be ample opportunity to rebuild and consolidate under a Taliban-run Afghanistan. This is not conjecture. America's Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley has already told American senators that the Al-Qaeda could re-emerge sooner than expected. In a nutshell, the return of the Taliban spells doom, both for the people of Afghanistan and for the existing geopolitical dynamics in the region and beyond. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
I didn't know about this Al Qaeda stuff because the other thing we were watching, the guy was trying to say the U.S. guy was like that they
The
had
Taliban
finished
may
them
have
off pretty
captured
much.
Afghanistan, but let's not forget who primed the country for this collapse. For 20 years, the United States fought the war in Afghanistan. Today, looking at the pictures that have been coming in, we have to ask, what was the point? What did America achieve after 2 decades of this war? This is a complete capitulation. Kabul has fallen without resistance. I have some pictures for you tonight. They capture the magnitude of America's failure. The first image is from Saigon in 1975. This is after America lost the Vietnam War. The North Vietnamese army was advancing on Saigon, so CIA helicopters scrambled to evacuate the US embassy. This picture is a nightmare for American policymakers and a reminder of their biggest defeat.
Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons with that.
The question
what's
was,
happening now.
would there be a repeat? Would Kabul 2021 become Joe Biden's Saigon moment? In fact, he was asked this question just last month. This is how he responded.
The Taliban
Sleepy
is
Joe.
not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable.
Either the US president was lying or his intelligence officers lied to him, because 40 days on, this is the scene in Kabul. Another US embassy, another helicopter evacuation, 46 years and 4,000 kilometers apart. The American embassy is completely abandoned. No personnel, no diplomats, no American flag. It's a complete ghost building. Earlier, it emerged that the U.S. embassy had instructed its personnel to destroy sensitive materials. And now reports say the Taliban have assembled outside it. It really sums up the situation. For 20 years, this embassy was a powerhouse in Afghan politics. Today, it lies at the mercy of the Taliban. The optics are bad enough, but America's planning was even worse. They spent 20 years and $89 billion on the Afghan army. They trained them, gave them modern weapons, and most importantly, marketed them. The United States oversold the Afghan army. They told us it was ready to repel the Taliban. But the reality was quite different.
And now, of course, the Taliban has all their
captured
equipment.
The entire country in weeks.
Because they
The final assault
surrendered.
was completed in days.
Oh, I guess even if they
So
didn't,
where
obviously just
exactly
steal all their
did
guns.
things go wrong? For starters, America never audited their expenditure. They dumped money on Afghanistan but did not check where this money was going. Most of it was diverted by corrupt politicians and commanders. And then you have the training itself. Americans love their gung-ho military tactics. But war in Afghanistan is different. It is a battle of patience and attrition. Two lessons that the US commanders, it seems, could not teach the Afghan army. What about defense technology? That's another disaster. Afghanistan uses American technology, whether for weapons or aircraft. To maintain and repair these, you need American contractors. Unfortunately, they were among the first ones to flee the country.
Just left them
when
helpless.
helicopters and jets were damaged, there was no one to repair them.
Fascinating.
Afghan mechanics frantically tried to
Never
call
thought of
US
that.
They just did
contractors.
not prepare them. Like, are they
It
just
blows
dumb?
my mind that things were as disorganized as I just don't understand. I guess the best I could say is they were caught off guard, but then I hear a lot of other people saying, no, they should have known this was going to happen.
Yeah, it just
very
seems like
confusing
such
to
a
me.
sloppy job.
And the worst part of it is that it's the people that left behind that are really going to suffer the brunt of it. So maybe the people that, for example, supported the Americans, they're going to get it the worst. They've sort of, these people that put themselves out there to help are now going to be the most targeted. But
yeah.
so they didn't look after their friends is what I'm saying.
Sometimes they connected on Zoom calls. Remember, we are talking about cutting-edge machines here, not something you can fix over Zoom.
What?
Did U.S. commanders
Zoom
know about
calls
all of
to
this?
fix, to
It's
teach
difficult
them.
Better
to
than
imagine
nothing,
that
I
they
suppose.
did not. But this was not a military decision. America had the money and the manpower to keep fighting. What they did not have was the political will. So what did they do? Hide behind false intel reports and cut deals with the Taliban.
Oh, what
On
does it say? Tell me.
It's interesting.
the 11th of August, U.S. defense officials unveiled this report. It said that Kabul could be encircled in 30 days and taken over in 90 days. That was on the 11th of August. Just 5 days later, the Taliban are lounging inside the presidential palace in Kabul. We concede that intelligence is not always precise, but America got it wrong by 85 days, close to 3 months. This can mean two things. The US was completely disconnected from the ground situation, or the intel report deliberately downplayed the threat. So it's either ignorance
combination of the
or
two.
malfeasance. While these intel reports were being churned out, the US was busy cutting deals with the Taliban. The first came courtesy Donald Trump, the man who lit the fuse. He excluded the Afghan government from the talks, put the Taliban on a negotiating table, and agreed to pull out from Afghanistan. Before he could complete the agreement, Donald Trump was ousted. It was Joe Biden's turn then to lead the war, or in this case, wind up the war. Joe Biden had no problems reversing Trump's policies, whether it comes to climate change or even Iran. But on Afghanistan, he stuck with Donald Trump's agreement. So we have two presidents, one Republican, one Democratic, both equally complicit. In the last few days, the US was again cutting deals. They were asking the Taliban to spare the American embassy. In the end, it did not matter because Washington ended up abandoning the entire building. The US wants to complete its evacuation process. What about the millions of Afghans on the ground? Apparently, that is none of their concern. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the US mission in Afghanistan was a success. Then how did the Taliban win? Blinken has conveniently blamed the Afghan forces.
I have to tell you that the inability of Afghan security forces to defend their country has played a very powerful role in what...
Yeah, but it's like, what were you doing for 20 years?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that wasn't our job. We're just... Like, I guess apparently, I think it's the same guy that says, like, yeah, well, our problem was Al-Qaeda and we took care of that. But just previous to this, she was saying how Al-Qaeda could be gaining...
Could see a resurgence as a result.
Anyways, so...
What we've seen over the last few weeks. The fact is, we invested, the international community invested over 20 years, billions of dollars in these forces, 300,000 of them, with an air force, something the Taliban didn't have, with the most modern, sophisticated equipment. And unfortunately, tragically, they have not been able to defend the country. And I think that explains why this has moved as quickly as it's moved.
And what about Joe Biden? What is the US president saying? Absolutely nothing. When Kabul was being captured, Joe Biden was on a vacation. He was at Camp David for the weekend. But how long can America shrug responsibility and try and deflect blame? It was their war, their retreat, and their mistakes. A repeat of their failure in Vietnam almost 5 decades ago. Millions of Afghans and thousands of US veterans will be asking the same question. What was the point of it all? So there is no doubt that the people of Afghanistan are going to pay the price for America's failures, but India will also have to deal with the consequences of America's mistakes. A Taliban-run Afghanistan will have a direct bearing on India's security. The question is, what are India's options at this point? Let's first start by understanding the challenges that India faces. Look at this map. This is India in the center with China in the north, a country intent on breaching borders. And then there's Pakistan, a country intent on trying to destabilize Kashmir. Now add a Taliban-run Afghanistan to this equation. And India becomes the front line against terror and expansionism. I can list out several reasons how. One, with the Taliban now in control of an entire country, there will be a rise in religious nationalism, pan-Islamism, jihad. This will raise hopes and boost the morale of several Taliban offshoots that will seize every opportunity to try and infiltrate India's borders. Second, with the increasing penetration of social media and the recent restoration of 4G services in Kashmir, it would be naive to believe that the Taliban's propaganda, its glorified stories of ambushes and missions, will not find their way to Kashmir. And this could stir up trouble in the valley. And following propaganda will be weapons. That's the third concern. The Taliban uses American-made sniper rifles and machine guns, handheld radars, and
how do they fix them
drones.
though?
Should any
they
of
know
these
how?
weapons find their way into Jammu and Kashmir, there could be serious consequences.
How do they fix the American weapon?
Well, I suspect if the will is strong enough, you'll set up some sort of way of repairing things. If it's essential to your, what you're doing, then you'll figure out a way.
The challenge is real. The question is, what can India do? New Delhi has a few options, none of which are easy. The first option is sticking to its principle of backing democratically elected leaders in Kabul, providing them with political and humanitarian support as long as it can. But doing so could invite the wrath of the Taliban, who as it is have targeted...
What would be the point of supporting the few government...
I can't see that as being a realistic option. But she is presenting it as an option.
Okay.
Several Indian interests in Afghanistan and now have taken control of the country. Which brings us to the second option. India can go the extra mile and support the Afghan forces. This includes supplying them with ammunition and air power and helping them regain control from terrorists. And involving itself militarily will make India a target of Pakistan proxies operating in Afghanistan. India cannot afford to get sucked into the conflict militarily, that too alone. Which brings us to the third option,
it doesn't sound like that option's realistic
dialogue and engaging with the Taliban. This is slightly controversial and we doubt if it will be feasible either politically or morally. But the Taliban is a reality that is here to stay. In September 2020, India's foreign ministry signaled the interest in dialogue for the first time. The Indian foreign minister participated in the intra-Afghan peace talks in Doha. This year, there were reports that the Indian security officials have opened up channels of communication with some Taliban factions, but engaging with the Taliban is like dealing with fire, especially given the overall leverage Pakistan has over the Taliban. Which then brings us to the fourth and last option. India could simply wait and watch, observe how the conflict unravels, see how the odds are stacked, and wait for an opportunity to present itself, weigh its options accordingly, and then make a move. But sitting on the sidelines could also downplay India's relevance as a stakeholder in Afghanistan. It could deny India the right to have a say in the country's future, especially at the quote-unquote high table in Doha, where global powers are chalking out strategies. For now, all of India's options look complicated. All of them carry serious repercussions. Unfortunately, this is the card that India has been dealt. Clearly, no easy choices for India, as well as the global community that backed the democratically elected leadership of Afghanistan. What is the best way forward from here onwards? To discuss this and more, I'm joined by a special panel of guests. From Colombo, I'm joined by M. Ashraf Headri.
All right, so we're going to have to pause that there because of the camera on, and I'm sort of wondering too if we may want to wrap things up because it's getting very late. I think we should watch this in our own time, but maybe share what we have viewed of this video with our subscribers. Definitely we're going to have to continue watching this in our own time. I know that for you love watching these panelists. I do too. We just did actually another video where we did watch the panelists get into it, and it was quite insightful. No doubt it's going to be the same here. But you know what, guys, due to the interest of time here and the fact that we got to get this out as soon as possible, and it's already 11:45 at night, we're going to have to get going, get editing this stuff for you guys, get the videos out there. And thanks so much for joining us as we continue to learn. I think that this was really insightful for me, especially when we saw India on the map and really got a sense of how they're positioned. We've seen that before, of course, and we knew this stuff, but
the other video, we did.
It can't hurt to have that reinforced because we come from a very North American, Western sort of centric point of view. And so, and we love the Indian people. So it's great to see a little bit more about the challenges they face. And so thanks again so much, guys, for coming on this journey with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.